you for what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Well, yeah, like I said, I felt forever indebted, and it wasn't just a mere obligation because he did it, but it's genuine because when my dad died, I didn't have, my dad was my friend. He was a figurehead emotionally and all levels. And Chuck stepped right in and sweet. He was there at the hospital with me, and his kindness was just unbelievable. And he knew the right things to say. And the right.
Remember how Chuck would always say, "Don't take my kindness for a weakness." He would always say that, "Don't take my kindness for a weakness." And I use that phrase a lot in my daily life with people.
He was a sweet guy, and I'll tell you, a frugal guy who drove an old beat-up car. He would say, "Chuck, why don't you buy?" And he could have bought another car, but he drove an old diesel. Remember that old diesel that he
did?
And Chuck, why don't you get a new car? And he goes, why? To get Woovy's hair all over the place? Peaches was called another nickname, Peaches, Woovy. But blonde hair all over the car. And so he says, why? It works best for us. And I said, well, what happens when the engine goes? Well, I got another one on a block, and we'll just put that in. That was Chuck.
He got that old blue van.
That was old, and then when he was, and it's a good thing he got that because he was in a wheelchair because of his leg injury, and so that helped a great deal.
Took that down to Gainesville and got it all fixed up for him, and that's so he could get in and out of there.
That's right.
Oh, Lord.
We're going to do a flashback real quick, and that's listen to that golden voice of Chuck Harder.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Chuck Harder for the people. Well, imagine some fireworks in your mind, if you would, as we're launching Project USA. This is when we're going to take our country back. We have talked about it for years. You've asked me to do it. We told you that we got scooped on May 16th when the Wall Street Journal did a front-page article on us. They didn't give the Project USA a whole lot of coverage, but it was in there. And we talked about it back then, and about 1,000 people said they wanted to get involved, and they've already sent in their money, and they're obviously first in line. They're getting their packages, their distributorship packages. What is Project USA? Pat Choate, tell us.
Project USA is a means for individual citizens to start their own independent business, distributorship, to sell from a catalog of made-in-the-USA products, to sell directly to customers out of their home, out of their car, to make a very good commission for doing it, to sell products that are priced as well as anything sold in the United States. We're trying to get equal and below Walmart or Kmart, to save American jobs and at the same time give consumers the choice of buying made-in-the-USA products. Ultimately, it's about saving the country.
I can go to the men's shop and pay $40 or $30 for a shirt. I have them custom made for me instead here in the USA for half of that. And it's obvious that when I go to the men's store, everything's made in Honduras or Malaysia or what have you. And we know that the workers are not getting paid over there. Instead, we've got a distribution system that's lost touch with reality. We got too many people making $200 million a year.
Well, you got a Michael Jordan making $20 million a year advertising Nike shoes.
I think it's more than that.
Well, you wound up with this one company alone, with the CEO has made $4.5 billion, and the simple reason is he uses cheap labor out of Asia, Indonesia, China, now going into Vietnam. He keeps all the profits, and that's just not the way to do business, Chuck.
No, it's not. Okay, let's go to Texas, Houston. Bob, hello there. Thank you for calling in. What you got on your mind?
Hey, Chuck.
Yes, sir.
You got the Wall Street Journal in front of you?
No, I don't. Not today.
Oh, rats.
Wait a minute. Yeah, here it is.
Top left-hand corner, front page, above the fold.
Okay.
See that article about free trade?
Free markets and democracy have done little to stem growing tide of scandal. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
See how fast Chuck was able to open that newspaper and just read out that headline right there and then?
Yep.
There was no internet. You couldn't do that. and bring up the newspapers at that time. It was in its infancy. So, you had to have all the newspapers. You had to have everything in hand, and you were there helping Chuck. It's a tribute to Chuck Harder today, ladies and gentlemen. It's a hard day, but we want to really memorialize Chuck's efforts on air and his impact on the USA and around the world, because Chuck went international on shortwave, and people listened all around the world and loved to hear Chuck's voice. And one of the biggest reasons is Chuck was just a normal, average American trying to work his way through life. If you listen to the opening jingle for the people, you can kind of hear some of the Chuckism. And a lot of people would make fun of that jingle, okay, because they would say, well, it doesn't reflect some of the nature of the show because it's cheesy and it's happy. Chuck was a happy person. He wasn't negative. Some of the stuff that he did talk about did have some negative notion to it, but Chuck wasn't a negative guy. He really wasn't.
Not at all.
That wasn't what he was about.
Chuck cared for his country and the people in it. He loved his country and he loved the people in it. And that's all he ever wanted to do, was to make America right, to fix America for the people that lived here. And I think he did a darn good job of it.
Well, I think he did too. Kay Reitz, former producer of For the People, and you have a organization that you're helping in your own right up there in Wisconsin. We've done broadcasts together for a unlawful death situation with Michael Funk there at Eagle Nation, but as a result of that, that's just kind of sprung, because there are injustices that happen in this country, legitimate ones that have made people very angry, but this is a mobilized movement, more or less, and you're behind this to try to get more people interested in standing up for the wrongs that are done against just citizens and being taken advantage of, wrongful deaths, injuries, and you were trying to explain to me a little bit more.
Exactly. Actually, what we want to do is we would like to work on changing some legislation on the way that some of these, or most of these cases with wrongful deaths by police officers or people that were wronged by police officers, we would like to change legislation on the way investigations are done with these agencies and transparency. There's just becoming way too many police killings in the United States, police wrongdoings, and our group is getting together to, like I said, work with people who have lost their loved ones to police violence and getting legislation changed in the way that the investigations are done and the way the investigations are handled.
Yeah, and it's not anti-police by any means.
Not at all.
Nothing to do with that.
All.
So if anybody thinks that might be where we're going, it's not. So if you're an officer in blue, we have many supporters that. We
have many supporters and very much respect for them.
We love
Our
police
issue
officers.
is in the way that the investigations are handled, and we believe that they should be handled federally rather than on a town-to-town basis. That's the issue that everybody has, is the way that the investigations are handled.
Yeah.
And our group believes that this should be handled on a federal level, straight across the board.
We got to be on the same page with all of this. And so where can people email you or learn more about what you're doing?
They can go on our Facebook page. It's the CCC page, Committee for Cultural Change. And we also have the CCC group at yahoo.com.
All right, beautiful. Kay Reitz, thank you so much for sharing with us and talking about our good friend that we miss dearly, Chuck Harder.
Well, thank you for letting me be part of this. And, Keith, thanks for the memories.
My pleasure. Well, let's make some more.
Let's do that, my friend.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Kay Reitz. We're going to have Ted Webb, who is an icon in his own right, and somebody that I've listened to for years since I've been in the Bay Area, Ted Webb of 970 WFLA. And he knew Chuck for many, many years, and is going back, I think, to the 60s. We'll ask him, at least the 70s and 80s. Let's listen to a little bit of Chuck Harder when he was doing his broadcast. And let's see, what cut do we want to use? The Working Myself to Death. Should we play that? Why not? This was one of Chuck's favorite songs, you might remember this. Clarence Hall, Working Myself to Death. Here he is on For the People.
My daddy told me, son, in 1945, you earned $100. Uncle Sam took only 5. Fords and Chevys were built here. A working man could survive. But now you make 100. Uncle Sam gets 45. $5 trillion debt. Politicians gave us that. Then they gave us NAFTA, and now they gave us GATT. They sold out our country, they mortgaged our children. Don't you think some should be locked up in San Quentin? I'm working myself to death, just trying to stay alive. 45% taxes, how can a man survive? Once I had a good job, but it moved to Mexico. And now I'm pumping gas at the local Texaco. There's foreign lobbyists buying politicians' votes, making other countries rich while our country goes broke. While college graduates flip burgers, don't you know? We're giving $50 billion to bail out Mexico. Working myself to death, just trying to stay alive. 45% taxes, how can a man survive? Once I had a good job, but it moved to Mexico. And now I'm pumping gas at local Texaco. Yeah, I'm working myself to death at the local Texaco.
Clarence Hawley, Working Myself to Death. You know, that song, Pat Choate, really tells the American story.
All right, that's Chuck Harder and Pat Choate, and I told you we're going to welcome in Ted Webb, who is an icon in his own right on 970 WFLA, just retired, but knew Chuck, from what I understand now, vintage 1963. Is that right, Ted?
That's good. That's correct. I met him when he was working weekends at Walt Radio. I was working weekends at Walt Radio at the time as well, and got to meet him and found him to be a most charming and interesting character. A guy with a lot of vision. You know, he'd always talk about these dreams that he had, and son of a gun, I saw him live out that dream, and I saw Chuck become a millionaire, lose it, and become a millionaire again. He was a guy that, man, I tell you what, few guys like him come down the pike in your life. I was fortunate enough to meet him as a young man, and knew him through his entire life, and just was proud to know that I had worked with him a couple of times. I worked with him at WFLA in the 80s. And that's when he started For the People.
Yeah.
And that's, I remember in his earliest concept, I said, this thing is going to go. And there was a couple of people saying, man, who's going to call up and want to ask legal questions or talk to a lawyer that Chuck might have on as a guest? I said, I'm telling you, Chuck's going to make this go. Don't ever bet against Chuck. And son of a gun if he didn't. And I'm very, very, very sad by his passing. And I feel like I've lost a great broadcaster, but a great friend.
He had a special quality, or qualities, not just one particular thing. He really cared about what he did, and the people that he made friends with. He was just funny and witty and a visionary, just so smart, and he was miles ahead of the competition. I mean, he would cook up these things that, most people would think he was absolutely nuts, and like you mentioned, he would just do it.
Oh no, and I tell you, he's done so much in his life. You know, there's a lot of stuff that